The town of Riverton, Ohio, was not known for crime. Local newspapers focused on school events, weather updates, and road construction. Violent crime was rare, and when something did happen, it was usually personal, contained, and quickly resolved. People believed they were safe there, and for the most part, they were. That sense of safety is exactly why no one noticed what was happening. It began in November 2012. Early one morning, a park maintenance worker discovered a body near a wooded trail just outside the city limits. The man appeared to be in his early 30s. He carried no identification. There was no visible blood, no obvious trauma, and no sign of a struggle. Local police initially classified the death as undetermined, possibly a medical emergency, possibly substance-related, possibly accidental. Detective Aaron Mitchell, 41 years old at the time, was assigned the case. Mitchell had worked homicides before, but this didn't look like one. Still, something felt off. The autopsy provided the first contradiction. The cause of death was asphyxiation, not accidental, not self-inflicted, and yet there were no defensive injuries, no broken skin under the fingernails, no bruises suggesting a fight. Whoever this man was, he had not resisted. That detail stayed with Mitchell. The victim was identified 3 days later as Thomas Reed, 34. He worked night shifts at a regional warehouse. He lived alone. He had no criminal record, few close relationships, minimal contact with family. According to co-workers, Thomas was quiet but polite. According to neighbors, barely noticeable. The case stalled quickly. There were no witnesses, no surveillance footage, no clear motive. By early December, the file was closed as an unresolved death. 6 months later, in Indiana, another body was found. This time, the victim was a woman, Rachel Moore, 29, a freelance graphic designer who worked from home. She was found in an outdoor area not far from her apartment complex. Again, no signs of struggle. Again, no witnesses. The autopsy result was identical: asphyxiation, no defensive injuries. Different state, different victim, same silence. No one connected the cases. Over the next 2 years, 3 more deaths followed the same pattern, scattered across different states. Each was investigated locally. Each was closed quietly. It wasn't until 2015 that someone noticed the pattern. That person was Special Agent Laura Kim of the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. Laura wasn't reviewing these cases because they were famous. She was reviewing them because they were forgotten. When she laid the files side by side, the similarities became impossible to ignore. Every victim lived alone. Every victim was socially isolated. Every death involved asphyxiation without resistance. She summarized it in one sentence. This isn't about who they were, it's about how invisible they were. She raised the possibility of a traveling serial offender. At first, the idea was resisted. There was no weapon, no signature violence, no taunting, no escalation that fit the classic model. But that was the problem. This killer didn't want attention. He didn't want chaos. He wanted silence. And because of that, he went unnoticed. By the time Special Agent Laura Kim formally raised the possibility of a serial offender, 5 people were already dead. None of them had made headlines. None of them had sparked public fear. None of them had been mourned beyond a small circle, if that. That, Laura believed, was the point. She began where local investigators had stopped: victimology. Not how they died, but how they lived. The victims no one missed. Laura compiled detailed profiles of the confirmed victims. Thomas Reed, Ohio, night shift warehouse worker, rarely socialized, ate meals alone, no close family nearby. Rachel Moore, Indiana, freelance designer, worked from home, minimal daily contact with others. Stephen Hall, Kentucky, long-haul truck driver, constantly moving, no fixed community. Linda Perez, Illinois, divorced, recently relocated, estranged from relatives. Marcus Doyle, Missouri, temporary labor jobs, unstable housing history, few long-term connections. On paper, they looked different. In practice, they shared something crucial. Their absence would not immediately alarm anyone. Laura summarized it in her notes. This offender selects people whose silence already exists. A different kind of killer. Traditional serial killers escalate. They seek control through fear. They leave marks, signatures, trophies, messages. This offender did none of that. No weapon was ever recovered. No DNA connected the cases. No scene showed signs of rage. Autopsies were consistent. Cause of death? Asphyxiation. No significant defensive injuries. No forced restraint marks. Medical examiners noted the same disturbing detail again and again. The victims appeared compliant. That compliance demanded an explanation. Laura shifted focus from crime scenes to pre-contact behavior. The invisible contact. Subpoenas revealed something local police had overlooked. In the weeks leading up to their deaths, every victim had interacted with an unidentified individual. The interactions were subtle: an email exchange about freelance work, a conversation at a bus terminal, a meeting at a public library, a phone call offering advice or assistance. Nothing threatening, nothing criminal on its face. The communications were brief, polite, and emotionally focused. One recurring theme appeared across recovered messages: "He really listened." That phrase appeared in different words, written by different people in different states. Laura recognized it immediately. This was grooming, not sexual, not financial, but psychological. The method emerges. By late 2015, the FBI officially linked the cases. The offender's process became clearer. He did not rush, he did not dominate, he did not coerce overtly. Instead, he followed a quiet progression. Approach: casual, non-intrusive contact in public spaces. Validation: reinforcing feelings of invisibility and exhaustion. Reframing: presenting disappearance as relief, not loss. This was not persuasion through force. It was persuasion through empathy weaponized. Laura wrote, "The offender does not push victims towards death. He removes the reasons to stay." A new case and a new detail. In March 2016, another victim was found, this time in Denver, Colorado. Her name was Emily Grant, 33. Emily worked at a public library. She lived alone. Her coworkers described her as kind, intelligent, and withdrawn. The scene followed the now familiar pattern: no disturbance, no struggle, no witnesses. But for the first time, investigators found written material. On Emily's laptop was a text file, no author name, no metadata. It contained just a few lines. "Some people stay because they think they have to. Others leave because no one would notice. Quiet endings hurt less." Laura stared at the screen for a long time. This was not a confession. It was ideology. Naming the offender. Within the Behavioral Analysis Unit, a working name was assigned. Not for the media, not for myth-making, for clarity. They called him the listener because that was his most consistent behavior. He listened without judgment. He mirrored pain. He normalized disappearance. And by doing so, he guided people towards a fatal decision: one they believed was their own. Why he was hard to catch. The listener avoided patterns investigators usually rely on. He did not remain in one state. He used cash and temporary phones. He chose victims with limited digital footprints. But most importantly, he left no noise behind. No frantic 911 calls, no missing persons alerts filed immediately, no public pressure. Time passed before anyone noticed. By then, evidence was cold. A warning that came too late. By the end of 2016, Laura Kim delivered a briefing to federal and state agencies. Her warning was simple and unsettling. This offender doesn't hunt loudly, he waits for silence, and silence is everywhere. The task force expanded, resources increased, but the killer was still out there, listening and preparing to act again. By early 2017, the investigation had reached a critical point. What had begun as a quiet review of forgotten cases was now a confirmed multi-state serial homicide investigation. The FBI task force expanded, bringing together analysts, psychologists, transit authorities, and local law enforcement from more than a dozen jurisdictions. Yet despite the growing attention, the killer remained invisible. No threats, no messages to the media, no attempts to claim credit. The listener continued to do what he had always done. He waited. A profile without a face. Special Agent Laura Kim stood before a room of investigators during a closed briefing. She didn't show crime scene photos. She didn't show autopsy reports. Instead, she showed timelines. Each victim's last month of life was mapped in detail: work schedules, digital activity, travel, routines. When those timelines were layered together, a subtle but disturbing overlap appeared. Every victim had spent time in public, transitional spaces shortly before their death. Bus terminals, libraries, community centers, temporary employment offices. Places where people passed through quietly. Places where conversations went unnoticed. Laura explained the conclusion clearly. The offender doesn't stalk homes, he stalks moments of pause. Moments when people were tired, moments when they were waiting, moments when they were open to being heard. The first visual trace. Special Agent Laura Kim stood before a room of investigators during a closed briefing. She didn't show crime scene photos. She didn't show autopsy reports. Instead, she showed timelines. Each victim's last month of life was mapped in detail: work schedules, digital activity, travel, routines. When those timelines were layered together, a subtle but disturbing overlap appeared. Every victim had spent time in public, transitional spaces shortly before their death. Bus terminals, libraries, community centers, temporary employment offices. Places where people passed through quietly. Places where conversations went unnoticed. Laura explained the conclusion clearly. The offender doesn't stalk homes, he stalks moments of pause. Moments when people were tired, moments when they were waiting, moments when they were open to being heard. The first visual trace. The first real break came from a place no one had expected. A routine audit of archived bus terminal surveillance footage in St. Louis, Missouri, revealed a small but significant detail. 2 days before his death, Marcus Doyle had been recorded sitting on a bench inside the terminal. Beside him sat a man investigators had never seen before. They spoke for nearly 40 minutes. There was no argument, no visible distress, no physical contact, just conversation. The man leaned in occasionally, nodding, listening. When Marcus stood to leave, the man placed a hand briefly on his shoulder, not possessive, not threatening, reassuring. The footage was subtle. It had been reviewed twice before and dismissed as irrelevant. This time, Laura didn't dismiss it. She froze the frame. "That's him," she said quietly. Following the thread. From that moment on, the investigation shifted. Analysts searched transportation hubs across multiple states for similar encounters. The criteria were narrow: extended conversation, no obvious relationship, victim later deceased. Within weeks, 6 more matches were found. Different locations, different victims, same man. Always calm, always attentive, always disappearing before anything went wrong. The listener wasn't careless, but he was consistent, and consistency creates patterns. The psychology of control. As the task force closed in, behavioral analysts refined the psychological profile. The listener did not fit the stereotype of a violent offender. He was articulate, educated, emotionally controlled. Psychologists classified him as a mission-oriented serial killer, someone who believes they are acting with purpose, even benevolence. In this case, that purpose was release. Release from loneliness, release from perceived failure, release from invisibility. He did not threaten victims, he reframed their pain. Investigators summarized his method in one line: he turned despair into consent. The mistake. The listener's downfall came from a single deviation. In Wichita, Kansas, he met Daniel Price, a 36-year-old warehouse clerk, recently divorced, financially strained, socially isolated. Perfect profile. But Daniel was different. Daniel kept a journal. Over several weeks, he documented his conversations with a man he referred to only as E. E never pressured him, never suggested self-harm directly, never used force. But he spoke often about peace, about absence, about how quiet endings didn't burden anyone. One entry read, "He says some people are only noticed when they make noise. Others disappear, and the world keeps turning. He says that's okay." Daniel felt uneasy. Instead of complying, he showed the journal to his sister. She contacted police. For the first time in 5 years, investigators had a living witness. Identification and arrest. Using transit footage, location data, and behavioral matches, authorities identified the suspect as Elliot Graves, age 49. Former crisis intervention volunteer, former graduate student in psychology, no criminal record. He lived transiently, paid in cash, left no digital trail longer than necessary. Graves was arrested quietly in Des Moines, Iowa, in a rented room above a closed storefront. There was no resistance. When informed of the charges, he nodded once and said, "I expected this." The interrogation. During interrogation, Graves remained calm. He denied being a murderer. "I didn't kill them," he said. "I listened to them." He spoke at length about modern isolation, about how society abandoned people who fell behind. He framed his actions as guidance, not coercion. Psychologists observing the interview noted something chilling. Graves felt no anger towards his victims, no hatred, no resentment, only ownership. He believed he understood them better than anyone else. The trial. The trial began in 2019. Prosecutors avoided sensationalism. Instead, they focused on evidence, a consistent pattern of psychological grooming, recorded encounters prior to deaths, expert testimony on emotional coercion and impaired consent. Medical experts testified that the victims had been guided into states of psychological dependency that eliminated meaningful choice. The defense argued autonomy. The jury disagreed. Elliot Graves was convicted on 9 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Aftermath. The case changed policy nationwide. Crisis intervention programs revised volunteer screening. Public space surveillance review protocols expanded. Law enforcement received training on nonviolent coercive patterns. But the damage could not be undone. Families described loved ones who had faded before disappearing. They didn't cry for help, they just stopped reaching out. Final reflection. The listener never chased anyone, never raised his voice, never left blood behind. He waited for silence, and that was what frightened investigators most. Because silence is common, because isolation is growing, because listening in the wrong hands can become a weapon. Sometimes the most dangerous crimes don't announce themselves. They end quietly. And if no one is paying attention, no one hears them end.